Welcome to Golden Girl, a space where we dive deep into health, healing, connection, and community. I'm your host, Becca Golden, and this podcast is all about sharing and documenting my journey. Each episode, we'll discuss topics like health and wellness, what I'm learning in therapy, work-life balance, relationships, community, and all the ways I strive for more aliveness and presence every day. In today's episode, I interview Krista Auvinen. Krista is my first official podcast guest, and this is such a great conversation. The first half is really informational about health topics like epigenetics and nutrition. Krista is such a wealth of knowledge, and she's so passionate about this stuff, as am I. So we spend the first half of the episode talking about some health topics. And then the second half of the episode, we get really vulnerable and we talk about trauma. So we talk about Krista's personal healing journey, including her experiences healing from childhood trauma, the importance of inner child work, and she also has a really beautiful perspective on forgiveness. I also talk about some of my own trauma work that Krista's visit actually brought to my attention. And then also just a quick warning that in this episode, I do talk a little bit about my previous experience with binge eating disorder. So if that topic is triggering for you, just make sure you skip over that. I'll have it really clearly marked in the show notes. With that being said, let's dive in. Krista, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Very excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm really happy to have you. I was thinking to start off, we could have you talk a little bit about your background and what you do to give everybody a little bit of context.
Yeah, sure. I'm a high performance coach and optimal health coach. So basically background in physiotherapy and then more in sports and nutrition. And from there, coaching nowadays more like mental performers, focused on that, consulting for some health companies.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, much more on that side compared to just health. So basically performance, mostly.
Can you elaborate on what that means? A performance coach, for people who might not know what that is, what does that mean?
Okay. For me, it means that we are starting from your health and we are trying to see what are the main things that we need to optimize in your health. Or what are the habits that make you eventually lead to that you are a healthy, well-functioning person, and then it's going to influence positively in your performance. And coaching with me would mean that we first check how is your sleep, how is your nutrition, how is your movement, so basically exercise, all of these habits. And then how is the mindset, how is your productivity, going to how to build the flow in your work. So that's the basic what I start with, having the healthy habits in check. We can go very deep in all of those topics because everything that I do in coaching is very personalized. So basically, I'm trying to check your metrics, your Oura Ring scores, your blood results, your DNA results. And we would go from there and see how do we build your health to be the best to support your career or your performance area. For a lot of my people that I coach, it's something on the mental performance side, like esports or professional poker players nowadays. But it could be anyone. And then when we go to performance coaching, then it starts to be much more about clarity, energy, courage, influence, and again, productivity, but much more on the side of how to balance that how you build yourself, career and longevity in your career, but without sacrificing your health or good relationships. So basically how you make sure that you have fulfillment and you can build longevity in your career, in your health, in your relationships. So making sure that overall you have success in all those areas in life.
Great. And then you also brought up the healing part of it. So we can incorporate that in however you want.
Yeah. I guess we can start maybe first how the health has come into why I have become very into the health and improving my health, and then how it has evolved to be more towards personal development and there to the trauma healing. And yeah, I have played soccer my whole life, so being very into sports, and from there wanted to optimize obviously my performance. And I was always happy to help people, making sure that they are healthy. I have had some illnesses in my family, like having alcoholism in the family and some mental disorders. And that has always been very important for me, that I take good care of my health, knowing that I might have that kind of genes, that I need to make sure that I take good care of my brain and my health. My family has always eat quite healthy. We have always eat gluten-free because my father had celiac. So I have been very aware of these things since very young age. I used to eat gluten like when we were very little, and then later on stopped it. Even if my father had celiac, we were always tested. We didn't have it. Which doesn't mean that it would be good to eat gluten, but it was not that we would be having celiac. So I think
this is an off-topic question. Is celiac just as common in Finland as it is in the US?
I would say yes.
Okay.
Like in general, I think pretty much overall it would be the same. Good question in a sense of, I think maybe in some parts of Europe it would be less often because how the wheat is treated.
That's why I was asking, because when I think of people who can't eat gluten, I assume it's a US problem. I just assume it's because of...
It's a genetic thing, actually. Like basically
celiac is
celiac is genetic, yes.
Yeah.
Basically then your body just cannot tolerate the protein that is in wheat and then actually other crops as well.
And then when I think of people who can't eat gluten, it's not because of the genetics, it's because of the way that
the crops are treated, like how they have been modified over the years. Like basically just that they have more of it. They have modified it. So that's why it's harder for the body to recognize what it is and then utilize it and basically break it down. So you can be tolerant to it or like sensitive to gluten. It doesn't mean that you would have celiac disease. But basically I'm pretty sure, and I have tested my DNA, that I know I would have those genes, that I could have celiac. But it has just, from the epigenetic level, it has not activated. But it could later in life.
Interesting.
So basically, if you have the genetic expression, it doesn't mean that something will come. So that's the epigenetics part of it. So basically, it would mean that something could happen. Like basically, there's a stressor outside, like in the environment, something stresses you and activates it. So it can be inside stressor or outside stressor. So coming from the environment or coming from the inside environment that you have.
Interesting. This is my theory about my own health because I think that I've always been susceptible to developing lipedema, but I don't think it really was triggered until I was exposed to mold and then underwent a period of very high stress at work at the same time as the mold exposure. I think that those events triggered the lipedema in me, but I think I was always predisposed to developing it because I had little symptoms here and there growing up, but it wasn't lipedema yet. So I wonder what other types of illnesses are in the epigenetics that people don't know about. So how would somebody learn about what they could potentially trigger based on the environment?
Okay, I can tell example now how it works. So basically you could carry something in your genes, for example, the celiacs. I can tell an example of my aunt who basically, like my father, would have the tendency. So my father has celiac like his mother. And we have always been tested. His sisters have been tested. So my aunts, us children have been tested. We have never had that we would have celiac.
Did you all get tested on your own accord or your parents tested you?
We have tested when we have been little, but I have been tested later on because, that could change over life. So we have been tested like later as well. Because now it comes to that. So for example, my aunt who has her whole life until her 50s, I think like or late 40s, was not having celiac, was always eating gluten. Nothing was there. But then she went through a very stressful divorce and it triggered celiac. And she was at the time working at farm. Basically, they had animals, so she needed to feed them. And even just the dust from the food that they fed to the animals was activating like a skin reaction.
Whoa.
But it's very rare. Like also like there's different forms of celiac and she was getting the reaction even on her skin.
Wow.
So basically it was the stress cause that nowadays she has celiac and it can be shown as a test that she has it. But basically this just shows that something that you can carry in your genes can be activated. So that's why certain diseases like even mental disorders and everything like could manifest later when there has been enough stressors in your environment. Because when we are younger, our cells are cleaning themselves better and they are taking care of it. But when you are consistently exposed to certain environments, certain stressors, and then there comes like in your case, the mold exposure maybe at the same time when you have the work stress. So then the load starts to be a lot. And also your eating habits have been in a certain way, like you have explained to me before. So you have not been paying attention on your diet. So the internal environment as well has not been ideal. So that stressed you internally as well. Definitely. Same as the mold and like everything that you get from that. And then comes the mental side of the stressors.
I had so much trauma that I didn't know I was holding on to.
Yes, and then there's the trauma that you have been carrying on top of that. Like, the emotional part.
Yeah, I always wonder if I had gone to trauma therapy from the beginning, and then I was exposed to the mold, if it would have taken the same toll on my body. I really don't think it would have taken the same toll.
That's an interesting theory. Obviously, we cannot test it.
Yeah.
But there's probably a lot of truth in that. That it's hard to say because mold can cause still pretty bad illnesses.
Yeah.
But we cannot ever compare.
Yeah, my goal now is to get myself as resilient as possible because mold is inevitable. I'm going to experience exposures to mold the rest of my life, and I have to make myself strong enough to be able to recover from that. So my quest right now is to get myself resilient enough with all the factors that are within my control so that when there are factors not within my control, my body is more able to handle it. I wish that I had thought about this before, and this is something that I want my listeners to think about. I never realized the impact of all of my behaviors and how it can add up over time and cause stress on my body. When I thought of stress, I only thought of psychological stress.
Yes.
I would think of financial stress and work stress and family stress. I didn't think that sleep deprivation was a form of stress. But it is. Sleep deprivation is a stressor on your body. And I didn't think about how all of the processed keto foods I used to eat is a stressor on my body because my body's having to figure out what to do with all these chemicals that aren't really food. So I think people's awareness of what stressors on your body even mean is really limited. And then what that can lead to is even more limited. People just don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Like sleep is one of the most important things that you can do. Basically, that is the recovery for your body. That's when the body cleans itself. That's why also not just what you eat, but when you eat is important. So the body would actually have time to clean itself during the night. That's why we don't eat too close to going to bed. And that's why what you eat before you go to sleep is important. But at the same time, it's like how you eat. Are you stressed when you eat? Because basically now, are you going to digest the food that you eat? Is it going to be nutrients that actually nourish your body? Or is it going to be something that causes stress for your body? Because if it's not well digested, it becomes something that causes problems instead of actually nourishing you. And it can cause more inflammation. It can cause more problems when it's not digested properly.
Something that I didn't know about until very recently was the concept of anti-nutrients.
Yeah.
And what you told me yesterday about the pumpkin seeds, I want you to talk about that because I think it's a really good visual. And this is a topic that we haven't, we're just jumping right in. But when it comes to nutrition, there's so many different narratives out there. There's so many people who have lots of different opinions. But what you described with the pumpkin seeds it's universal. Like it just makes sense. And it's something that people can start to keep in mind as they make their own choices and follow whatever guidance they want. I just think it's good perspective.
Yeah, sure. I think like diets in general are just tools for us to use. It's a little bit like all the devices. Like if you know the conditions in your body and you want a certain outcome from it, like we are healing you from something, we want to understand it. And then we are using some kind of diet as a tool, like elimination diet to know, for example, what is causing something or letting you time to heal something. Same like keto is a diet, but we would have a goal why we are doing that. Are we doing it high fiber keto? Like what are we actually supporting in your body? All of these are just tools. And what I want to say about nutrition, like I have told you before as well, is that something that works for you now might not work for me. So basically it's very personal in your journey and what you need in this time. And it's also saying that what works for you now might not work for you in 6 months. Because we are like changing so much. The gut microbiome is changing a lot. There's many factors that are changing. Also like how balanced diet are you eating? What are the things that your body needs in those moments?
That is so important. Like you're saying this so casually because this is something that you know and you've known, but this is something that people just don't know about. And there are times where people will find a diet that works really well for them. And as soon as it stops working well for them, they start to ask themselves, what's wrong with me? What did I do wrong?
Mm-hmm.
What did I do differently? Why did I mess it up? Because I found the diet that worked for me and now it's not working. So there's something wrong with me. And I think your point is so important because when you think about the fact that you have a human body, it's a body. It has all these connected processes and it evolves over time and your body has different needs at different times of your life. So if you have a diet that's working really well for you, it doesn't mean it's going to always work well for you. And it doesn't mean something's wrong with you either. It means that your body is changing.
Yeah, or that you need something different in this time and space. Maybe there's more stress. Maybe you need something more at this time. We can use diets as tools. But at the same time, we want to build you a lifestyle that you can keep up for the longest time. That's why we don't want to go too extreme. We want it to be something that you actually want consistently keep up. And then there can be the nuances that something changes here and there.
Mm.
And like we have talked with you, how important it is to actually listen to your body. Sometimes there is those times that you want to eat meat or you want to eat something that is more fatty. Depends also basically sometimes on your cycle and sometimes on some other factors. But our bodies are incredibly smart. The way they are functioning, we have very hard time create that, like in medical terms, in some other kind of environment, artificially. Our bodies are so smart. I think great example from this, I'm going to go to the pumpkin seed as well. I'm not forgetting that about the antinutrients. But I think first, understanding how smart is the human body and how well it does things for us when we have no idea is if you have somebody with type 1 diabetes. So basically when you don't produce insulin, so you need to inject yourself the insulin so that when you eat something, basically anything that would spike your blood sugar and you don't have the insulin that would take care of it. What happens with these people is that even if you would eat every day, the same time, the same meal, and think you could just inject the right amount of insulin, it's not the same. Even if you eat the same meal at the same time, that's how much the environment in the human body changes. So basically there's the stress factor, there's like how well did you sleep, there's the smallest changes in the hormonal balances and the neurotransmitter balances that can influence how much insulin you actually need to digest the food. And our body does this every day automatically when you don't have type 1 diabetes. How amazing is that?
That is amazing.
That is amazing. Seriously. Like,
so you're saying that for the average person who doesn't have type 1 diabetes, their body is basically calibrating how much insulin to produce based on how much sleep you've gotten, how stressful of a day you had, maybe if your nervous system is feeling regulated. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, basically I'm saying that how much the internal environment changes based on all of these factors.
Mm-hmm.
So basically how much that food that you would be eating could spike your blood sugar levels varies on multiple factors, not just what is inside the meal. Is it the same amount of protein, fat, and carbs? What we often think that is, and that you eat at the same time. We could think that's all of it, but it's not just that. So basically what I'm telling is that how smart is the body that it produces exactly the right amount of these things, because when we would do it outside of the body, so when we actually need to just check, okay, how much did I eat? How much will I put this insulin now in my body? It shows just how much more complex all the processes are. So when you come out from that kind of cycle that I need to eat this, I need to eat that, and you start to listen, what is the craving? And then we come to that, is it something that your body really wants? Or is it the craving? Sometimes it's what the gut microbiome wants. For example, if you keep eating sugary foods, you are growing the certain kind of bacteria inside your gut. I'm not going to use like good bacteria, bad bacteria, but basically the ones that you are feeding, it's the ones that are going to take more space, like populate your gut more. And then they kind of send signals to your brain. And they are the ones now signaling through the gut-brain connection. They are signaling, we want more of this. We want more of the sugar. We want more of this because they want to stay alive.
Right.
They want to have more of them there. So that's their mission. That's why sometimes our cravings have nothing to do with what our body wants. The bacteria inside the gut lining is just something that we are living together with. And sometimes it's something that they want and not what we want. So it's important to understand what are the real signals, what we actually want, what is good for us. And then I think the knowledge will help in this. Just awareness is that, okay, just you consider for a minute, is this something that I really want? Or is it something else?
Yeah, and that can be a lot harder to even ask yourself if you have unstable blood sugar. Because I was pre-diabetic and I'm not anymore.
Wow.
But I used to be pre-diabetic before I knew anything about food or nutrition or really anything about my health or my body. And my blood sugar was all over the place. And so it wasn't a matter of me asking, is this something that my gut microbiome is asking for? Or is this something my body is craving? I was a ravenous animal. Like I would have taken food wherever I could find it. I didn't have the connection with my body to be able to even ask those questions. But now that I have my blood sugar under control and I do a lot of practices to make sure that I am giving my body the best chance of absorbing the nutrients. So I'll make sure that when I'm eating, I'm not distracted and I'm calm. I'll take a few deep breaths before I eat my meal. I'll try to eat the meal outside. I don't actually know if the outside thing does anything, but it feels good to me. So that's what I do. And sometimes my body, since I'm going through all these changes with the mold recovery and trying to heal my microbiome despite the MCAS stuff, I will have cravings for the strangest foods. Like for 2 weeks straight, I'll be craving red meat and kale and raspberries and sweet potatoes. And then I'll just eat those things because it's what my body is asking for. And it's the first time I've heard my body asking for things that's I can tell it's coming from my body instead of blood sugar.
And I want to add just on the blood sugar. I think it's great that you are figuring out these things. And especially now, how you eat, I think it's very important that you are taking the time, you are consciously eating, because that's very important. If you are distracted, you don't feel actually as nourished because you are not paying attention what is happening. You are not maybe chewing enough. It's also, it helps a lot how well the food is going to be digested. So at least 30 times. So basically you have enough saliva. It already starts to break the food inside your mouth.
30 times you're supposed to be biting 30 times per bite of food. You should chew 30 bites.
Yeah, so it's enough like breakdown because the processes start already in the mouth with the saliva. And the 3 deep breaths that you're taking before, it's actually activating the parasympathetic nervous system. So basically...
That's the rest and digest.
Exactly.
The digest being digesting food.
Yes.
Got it.
So that is important that you are activating that part so that your body is in the best possible condition to actually take in these nutrients. And just having that peaceful moment also, because we are often rushing through the days. Food is just something that gives us, which leads to me the next point that I wanted to make, to have more pleasure of something, which actually also now when you were mentioning that you were just an animal eating whatever you could. And I'm curious which part of that has been the blood sugar spikes and which has been just, for example, dopamine addiction and getting that feeling good.
It was a little bit of both. It wasn't about feeling good, but it was an addiction because I had full-on binge eating disorder, like true binge eating disorder. I went to therapy for it and the therapists were like, we can't help you because it's a physiological thing. Because as soon as I started on keto, my urges to binge went away. I cured my binge eating disorder by going on keto. I later was like, well, that's not a cure. That's a loophole. This is a shortcut. I figured out how to avoid the urge to binge, but I haven't taught myself how to say no to an urge. I just got rid of the urges. But I knew keto didn't feel right long term for me. So I was always trying to figure out ways to add carbohydrates back into my diet. I tried all the different types, but when I would feel ravenous, it didn't feel like I was seeking the pleasure of eating because I would often eat way past the point of fullness to the point where I was really uncomfortable. But I do feel like I got addicted to that overstuffed feeling and it was all my body knew. It was, I think, more of a form of numbing than pleasure.
Yeah, I completely get that. And now when I mentioned dopamine, it's also that like feel-good hormone, not necessarily that you have feeling good about yourself or like in the process, because dopamine is just about the addiction. Like, a lot of times like you want to hit more of the dopamine. So basically now, for example, binge eating, you can get addicted to many things. Either you get addicted to substances, for example, sugar, certain food.
I was 100% addicted to sugar. And to this day, if I eat a Twix, I will go down a dark, dark spiral downward of sugar addiction. Like Twix is my gateway drug.
Wow.
The Twix is the...
Yeah. Okay. It took me a little while, but I got there.
Yeah. It's my gateway drug. Like I can have other types of chocolate, but if I have a Twix, I can feel suddenly that ravenous part. I feel like it's an addiction. If I don't have Twix in my life at all, my life is a lot more stable. And then as soon as I have one Twix, I literally am like an addict. I'll spiral out of control and then I'll find myself eating all sorts of stuff that I would never want to nourish myself with and stuff that I don't even want to be consuming. And I feel like I'm doing it against my will. Like I'll sit there and know it's in my hand and I'm like, I don't want to do this and I'll do it anyway.
That's very interesting because basically now the dopamine, the one thing is to get addicted to substances, but then the other one is to get addicted to behavior. So basically in this binge eating case, it could be that you are actually just so addicted to the behavior that you just keep doing it and keep doing it. So that's the behavior you could get addicted as well. But also because dopamine is the hormone and you actually need more and more of it all the time to get the same kind of feeling that you are after. So that's why you first eat 1 Twix, and then it's 2, and then it's 4, and then it's 8. Because basically
then it's a lot more than 8.
But basically then it comes to that point that the first amount doesn't give you any more the same hit that the first gave you, which we actually have a dopamine addiction in our society a lot, because it's not just now the one food or the one behavior. It's basically you building on top of different behaviors. You are eating the Twix, you are watching your phone at the same time, the TV is on. Like basically you are building all these behaviors because you don't get the same hit anymore from the one thing. So you are building on top and building on top. That's why we are addicted to our phones. And that's why we do watch something while we are eating. Because just the eating alone is not anymore bringing the same amount of the dopamine or the feeling good, or feel good hormones. Here are a few things. When you're eating healthy food, we get a hit of different neurotransmitters. So it doesn't feel the same than eating something like the Twix that you would get a quick dopamine hit would be. It would be something more like you're eating salad and you're knowing you're eating healthily. Maybe it's more serotonin that you're getting. And it actually comes later because you feel good about yourself because you ate this healthy food and your body actually feels good. So what is released is different compared of that you get it quickly, the hit of the dopamine.
So I usually think of dopamine and serotonin. I forget that they're different. And whenever somebody says either dopamine or serotonin, I've just in my head, I've lumped them into the same thing. But the clarification for the listeners is that dopamine is the one that's more addictive type of reward.
Yes.
Type of neurotransmitter. And then serotonin is a feel good, calm, pleasure neurotransmitter. Is that the right way of putting it?
Yeah, you could simplify it probably do something like that.
Okay. We need to simplify it for people. So if that's good enough, then
yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I do want to know how all this pertains to your personal journey.
I think we should go for quickly just through the if you want.
Seed?
Yes, the pumpkin seed if you want to go.
Let's talk about the pumpkin seeds, and then I want to talk more about your personal journey.
Okay, so for the pumpkin seed, like you mentioned now, the antinutrients. Basically, when we are eating something, there's the nutrients inside everything that we eat. But how will we get access to them is then how will we prepare them and how will we, what is the best way for us to basically be consuming them. And the pumpkin seed example that I have used with you is that, okay, we need to think not just what is the purpose for the food for us, but what is the purpose of the pumpkin seed in this world? And it's not necessarily become our nourishment. Their purpose biologically is to grow another pumpkin, to continue spreading and growing more pumpkins. So basically the pumpkin seed has been evolving to be able to go through the digestive system of animals and not to be broken down before they would be able to fill their purpose and grow a new pumpkin. So there's antinutrients that make sure that they're not going to be broken down before they would get through the digestive system of an animal that is carrying them to a different location so they could grow a new pumpkin there. And only after they get the right kind of conditions, so going inside the ground and get the right kind of darkness, and then they are okay, I can start to release the antinutrients, and then we get to actual nutrients that would be there to support to grow the new pumpkin. So for us as a human, what does it mean? It would mean that, okay, we understand that we need to create the right kind of environment for the pumpkin seed to be able to release the antinutrients. So we will get them when they are more easy for us to digest. So we would get the nutrients from the pumpkin seed. So oftentimes for certain nuts and seeds or crops, we would need to do some preparation, which often means soaking or sprouting. And we will have tables that we can use to know how long we would soak these nuts or these seeds or these grains to make sure that they would be more easy for us to digest.
I love this example because I love to personify everything. I have been personifying all of my inner emotions through IFS, and I talk about that a lot on the podcast. I talk to my emotions like they're a whole person and they have a purpose. So I love the concept of thinking about all the foods that we're eating and asking what its purpose is on this earth. A pumpkin seed. Hey, pumpkin seed, like what is it that you're trying to do on this earth? Why are you here? What's your mission? The pumpkin seed's mission is to grow a pumpkin. Of course, the pumpkin seed's mission is to grow a pumpkin. That makes perfect sense. And so when you think about it that way, it's actually really logical why it would have all these protective mechanisms to make sure that nothing disturbs it while it's moving through the intestines of an animal that consumes it. Its mission is to grow a pumpkin, so it's going to do everything that it can to protect all the nutrients inside of it, like you said, until it makes its way out of the animal and finds its way into the ground in the right conditions. So I think it's so fascinating that humans have become smart enough to identify what those conditions look like for different types of foods, and that people like you know what those things are. People like me do not know what those things are. So I'll just eat raw pumpkin seeds, not thinking twice about it. But now that we've talked about these things, I know that that's something that I should be soaking. But how would the average person like me find out which foods require that kind of preparation to remove the anti-nutrients or to make the food most likely to be digested well and absorb the nutrients from it?
Good question. I think there starts to be more awareness around this because you can actually find activated pumpkin seeds here in US from the store.
Oh.
Really just that says activated, which means oftentimes they are soaked and sprouted. Then can I say that
What does sprouted mean?
Sprouted is basically that after they have been, for some seeds it needs to be soaked first and then you're going to sprout them. So basically you're going to create the environment where they're going to grow sprouts.
Oh, that is, I mean, I thought that's what it sounded like, but I didn't think that was what it could be.
Yeah.
That
but
is
basically
what it is.
you just create the environment that they could be started to sprout. It doesn't mean that we're going to grow them to be sprouts.
Okay.
We can do that with some things. But ideally we just create the environment that they could start that process. We don't necessarily need them to grow to be sprouts. But we kind of, depending, for example, almonds would be that we first soak them overnight and then we let them sprout to 1 to 2 days, for example. And then it doesn't mean that they're going to grow sprouts in that time. We just give them that amount of time and then we know, okay, now it's a good time for us to eat these almonds. And so there's some studies where you can see how long it is for each kind of nuts or seeds or the grains. And I, for example, have a timetable or like a table that I use that is like my cheat sheet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cheat sheet.
Yeah, that I use, that I check. Okay, there's some nuts and seeds you don't need to soak or sprout, like macadamia nuts, pistachios are good examples from some nuts that you wouldn't need to soak or sprout.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have some that are like overnight, like cashews or pecan nuts, and some of them are then for longer time.
Is it typically nuts and seeds and grains?
Yes.
Or does this apply to other things too, like apples or potatoes?
No.
Okay.
It doesn't. Yeah, this
So
is more
nuts,
for
seeds,
and
grains.
Yeah. So, for example, soy, I think, is a good example here. What I myself personally like to use and recommend for many of my clients is that when, like for soy products, I would like them to be ideally soaked and sprouted and then like heated to certain temperatures. So, for example, making them to be tempeh
Instead of
eating just the soy like that. So it makes it in the format that is easier for us to use the good nutrients that we get from the soy.
I have been not eating any soy because I don't even know how to make sense of it. In the US, it seems so daunting for me to figure out if it's okay for me or not. And I have estrogen dominance from the mold stuff.
Yes.
So it was just easier for me to not eat them.
Yeah, for sure. I have avoided soy products my whole life, basically, pretty much. And I know how it influences me if I would eat them. That's why.
How does it influence you?
Oh, like exactly like, I would know that I will have too much estrogen, like my hormones.
Wow.
Like I feel more out of balance and I would feel, I don't know, can you say that?
Like in Canada, when you said you went to Canada?
Yes, exactly. Like basically that my emotional reactions become too much. Like, so I also know that then there would be something in my hormonal balance. Not that I have measured it, that I eat soy purposefully and then I measure, because I have never really liked soy or eat soy that much. So I would have done that to myself. A little bit like I don't eat a lot of gluten just to test it out. How will I feel after?
It's amazing, though, that you have that kind of body awareness and that you can feel when you've eaten something that's throwing you off. I think there are very few people who are in tune with their bodies enough to even be observing the changes in their bodies, let alone tracing it back to what the cause might have been. So that's really amazing.
Yeah. I think you learn that more and more, the more healthy food you will eat, the more you will develop that kind of way that you will actually learn to listen to your body. Actually, our taste changes when you start to eat more healthy food. And you probably have noticed this when you have been without sugar. Food tastes different. You actually don't want to eat anymore those kind of foods that you used to like to eat just because your palate has changed so much.
I think that's how I figured out that it was a true addiction that I had, because when I had stopped eating sugar for so long and then I would eat the things I used to like, I didn't even like how it tasted, but I would still crave it like an addict. So I think that, yeah, my palate definitely changed.
Yeah.
So for the listeners, before Krista and I recorded this episode, we were going back and forth about like, what should the topic be? Should this be very health focused, or should we talk about trauma and relationships? Krista and I can talk for hours about all these topics, and we decided to just see where it would go. But I really wanted to talk about Krista's personal healing journey too. So that's where we're going to shift to next.
Okay. Yeah, we have talked with you like trauma healing, trauma therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I started my trauma healing in my early 20s when I started to read more about emotional blocks, or how I would call them emotional locks, because that's what's the expression from this book that I learned, but I read in Finnish.
Emotional locks?
Yes.
And that's the translated version of the
Yes.
Finnish term?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. I think in English we would more talk about emotional blocks.
Emotional blocks. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, that was like my first introduction to deeper dive into this kind of awareness.
You read it in Finnish. So
I was in my early 20s.
okay.
So basically that.
When did you move from Finland?
When I was 24, 25.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, I was working in Finland and studying in Finland.
Okay. You read this book in your early 20s?
My friend actually made me do this test online. Like this is like, so you will see like what are your emotional blocks, so that you will see like, okay, what are the things that you have carried since childhood? Is it abandonment, or is it overly critical something? Or what are basically those things? And I did the test, and it was fascinating because I also know that sometimes when you have a real block in something, you will not see that in yourself. You actually thought that something else is more of the things that you carry with you. So after doing the test, I was very fascinated, and I started reading the book. And it led me to do this kind of emotional block therapy, because I found a therapist who, based on this, was having talk therapy with me, and at the same time also treating my body. So finding where I'm carrying those emotions, what I have locked inside me, and how can we release them. And I actually was religious about reading from this author these books and getting deeper and deeper. And I actually read it every year once, because I also realized that when I heal one, I find other and deeper locks that there is. So I did a lot of work and exercises, a little bit what I hear you telling that what you do in your therapy. So I found these exercises from these books, and I did it. Like I was into meditation already at that time. And then I just guided myself based on the exercises to visit my childhood traumas and go there first and observe and see what has happened. And then I go there as my adult self, taking care of my inner child. So basically a lot of inner child work, going through all of these, like any kind of trauma that we have had as a child. And yeah, I guided a lot of those myself through these self-help books that I found. And
you did this all
I did
yourself?
Yes.
And then what?
Before I found a therapist who was helping me.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, I have done it a lot myself. And I have always loved to read different kind of books. And whenever there is examples, I have always do the works and do the kind of meditations myself, and really just guided my mind to go through this kind of inner child work. And then I have found hypnotherapists who are doing, like, you can do self-hypnosis, basically do the same kind of healing yourself. So Marisa Peer has been one that I found that was very helpful, and I did love her meditations and the hypnosis that she did, and I still use them.
What's her name?
Marisa Peer.
Okay.
She's a hypnotherapist from UK.
Okay.
And yeah, then I have had normal talk therapy and different kind of healings. Like, I have lived and traveled all around the world, and I love to find different methods to release different traumas from my body and try the Eastern medicine and the Western medicine and find the differences, doing a lot of osteopathy and finding also, like we talked with you earlier, even the organs and what kind of feelings they carry, like where is the sorrow, where is the anger stored in the body, how do we release them through these Eastern philosophies, like either acupuncture or even like certain kind of healers or osteopaths could really be treating. Even in the Western kind of thinking, we have that nowadays, much more that kind of mind-body connections. So yeah, I think all of that comes together, like healing the body, healing the mind, and doing like releasing those emotional blocks that we have.
How has that felt for you since then? Because if you started this work in your early 20s,
Yeah.
you were doing it on your own at first, then
Yes.
you were seeking out different practitioners to heal you in different ways. Is there a modality that you found to be the most beneficial for your personal traumas that you were working through?
I think inner child work has been very important, like understanding inner child work and forgiveness. Forgiveness being a very big part of it. I think forgiveness meditations and exercises have been so powerful because we carry a lot of that inside us. And all forgiveness is eventually self-forgiveness. And it's a gift that you give to yourself and you let go. And it brings so much understanding, so much love. And it's definitely bring that to me. And I have so much understanding towards everyone that I meet. And I have so much more love. And I just love that I have been able to forgive even the hard things that have happened in my life. And I don't need to carry any of that with me because oftentimes we are carrying a lot of all the bad emotions that we have felt during our lives and all the trauma. And yeah, it's eventually you are letting yourself go free when you let the other one as well to go free by forgiving.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. And I think the way that you go about it is also really inspiring because you're not just saying that you're deciding to forgive these people. Like there's a way to go about this in a really unhealthy way. And that would be to just declare that you don't care anymore. If somebody has caused you any kind of harm or distress, and you just say, you know what, never mind, I forgive them. I'm good. I no longer have to carry this. Like that's not going to be effective. But I know that you've gone and done the really hard work and you've gone through the grieving of these things and you've really like put yourself through the emotions to actually allow your body to fully release them in the way that they need to be released versus just brushing it off and deciding that you're not going to carry it. Like you actually did the really brave thing, which is to face it head on so that you could let it go.
Yeah, I have a good process for it, which is exactly what you described. Is first that when you go back to a memory that you would have, somebody that you would want or need to forgive. And you go and first 1-2 minutes, you can really just go through to that and you go into that emotion so you actually feel how it has felt for you. And you let yourself feel bad because you know it's just for 2 minutes. And you really will feel that because we really want to release it. So we want to really go back to that.
So like if I have resentment towards somebody, if I feel like somebody did something to me and I'm very angry with them and I resent them, I'll just for 2 minutes go to that memory and allow myself to be angry at them and allow myself to feel resentful.
Whatever you feel.
Okay.
And you see that person and you understand how they have hurt you. And then you move from that point to be trying to understand them and understand why have they hurt you? Because oftentimes hurt people hurt people. So you will eventually be going with understanding why this person have treated you this way. And it can be hard. There is some cases when it has been very hard for me. And for some people and some situations, you need to forgive more than once in your mind. It's not that it needs to be one and done. Some things are huge.
Yeah, if I were to do this practice myself, which I've done variations, I have to do it like 20 times. And then it depends on if I still regularly see the person. If it's somebody who's still in my life and it was a repeated thing where I continually, maybe I didn't know enough about myself or my boundaries at the time. And so it was something that happened over and over. And I now know that it was harmful to me. It just depends on how conditioned I was to accept that behavior before. And if that person's still in my life now, like I feel like it could be a practice that I have to do regularly until I no longer interact with that person.
I think it's important, especially the people who are in your life that you keep doing it. Like, even if it's daily, like, I think you can forgive something, even if it would be repetitive
Mm-hmm.
and or has been that in the past, because you are not that person anymore. They are not that person anymore. Like, the same behavior wouldn't hurt you of the person who you are today.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Basically, like, we are often carrying the part of ourselves that we are not letting go, but the person who you are today, like, who are you today? Like, you would forgive very different kind of things.
Yeah,
And
that's a really good point.
you could easily understand where the person was coming from and who you were as well. But the person who you are today will understand who you were, will understand who they were. You can understand where they were coming from. I think understanding brings that. It's easier to then to forgive for them. Like, I forgive you. I will let you go. I forgive myself. I will let myself be free. And in the end, you can wish them well. And that's how you really let go. It's like, I really wish you well. And you can actually do something like you physically send them something, or like send a letter or a note, even if you would have never send it, but write it down. Do something actual. So you will show yourself that you are actually just letting go, because it doesn't serve you anymore. It doesn't serve you, the person who you are today, carrying all of that with you. Only person who is suffering from that is you. They will not know. They will not carry that pain with them. And even if they would, that's on them. And they should be able to let go of that as well. I think we will function so much better as a humanity when we learn to forgive even the hard things. And I often think this, even if it would be something in family, and we often carry some traumas from our childhood. No parent is perfect. The children will always have some kind of trauma in whatever form it will be.
Mm-hmm.
And I have had some traumas from my childhood that has been painful for me. Living in alcoholic family, there has been physical and emotional and mental ways that I have got hurt. And those have been times hard to forgive in the beginning, like you would think it would be. And then when I go through each scenarios, I will understand. I understand my father, I understand my mother, I understand their behavior, and I can forgive them because I understand. And then I forgive them, I let it go. And also I know that the people they are now, meeting me now when I'm 30 years old, and it has been more than 20 years from those interactions that we had when I was a child, they are completely different people. And I want to meet them who they are today, and not who they were when I was a child, and how those interactions at that time created my traumas. I'm meeting them as an adult, and I have completely moved on the childhood traumas that I used to have. And I love to meet them of the people who they are today. And I understand that even somebody who hurt me would have hurt me a year ago. I like to think that I have grown a lot in this year, and I trust that that person have grown a lot in this year, and that they are not the same person. And I want to meet them who they are today, and not who they were or how they treated me a year ago. And that's the gift that I give to myself, and how I hope I would be treated as well.
I think that's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing all of that. I myself have let go of a lot this past year. Going through trauma therapy, I've learned to forgive a lot of people, and I'm still working on forgiving myself for things. Sometimes I think I've forgiven myself, and then I discover ways that I haven't. But I will say that the path of forgiveness, it does make me feel so much lighter. And I can feel it radiating from you, that you just have so much light within you. And it's so beautiful that you're able to meet people however they are, in that version of them, without holding anything against them. And I think the world needs more of that. And it's really beautiful. And I know it's taken hard work that you've had to go through. You're one of the first people that I've ever met who's just proactively wanted to face these things and heal from it in the same way that I do. Like I have this innate desire to heal everything in me as deeply as possible, and understand everything in me as much as possible. And I know you have that too.
Yes.
Even just over this last week, you've been exploring your traumas more deeply and in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And I really admire that.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's the growth mindset that I have so much. And I really just want to grow and evolve more. And I'm always so curious what I will find. And it just leads me to live a better life. I have deeper connections with other people. I have better connection with myself. And you are just, more in ease, like enjoying more, being more present, and able to really meet people as who they are. Yeah.
So in the last 10 minutes, do you have anything you want to share, or should I find questions? Because I could ask you a million things, but do you have anything else that you want to say about your healing journey or anything really?
I'm really open. I think that was one of the topics, vulnerability, if you want to go with that one. So a little bit like...
I would love to go to the vulnerability topic.
Well, let's do that. Yeah.
So you had shared with me that you were raised to be independent and not be vulnerable at all.
Yeah.
So what does your vulnerability journey look like?
Yes, that is a good question, because I don't even like the word vulnerability. Finnish is my first language, and one of my coaches who is currently working with me needed to translate the word for me because I didn't remember it in Finnish, because I have not used it for the longest time, and I didn't like that word either. So I really don't like vulnerability in myself, because in other people, I love that and I have so much understanding, and I completely understand how that creates deeper connections. But as you said, if I have been raised to really hold my emotions in and not share, and also be always in control about my behavior, my emotions, that has led to that then I don't share authentically everything, because I have needed to be in control and I have needed to hide some things that have been happening inside my emotions first, but also like in our household. And so I have not shared openly. I might have compartmentalized it and tell a little bit to this person, a little bit to that person, but never sharing everything, just to make sure that nothing tracks back on me or could get back on me or hurt me.
Nothing would hurt you.
Yes.
That's where it comes back to, is protection.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And now more and more I'm hearing from people around me that they want to hear me authentically, everybody authentically sharing their stories. And then you get those deeper conversations like you and I are having, where we actually share things that make us grow and make us improve and really connect more and more. So now I'm more on the side of things, how to really share truly who I am and my story.
How are you practicing it?
Definitely sharing with more people around me. And now going here in your podcast and talking about different topics.
Yeah, this is a big deal for you, right?
Yes.
Is this your first time speaking on a podcast?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Oh, wow. I'm so honored. How does it feel? How has it felt?
Oh, really good. Really easy with you, because we are also talking about the topics that, are important to us and hopefully will help other people to share more.
It definitely will.
Yeah. And you could now share like how you have also lead with your vulnerability and sharing your journey, not just with your podcast audience, but here now when I have been like visiting you guys, living in the same household with you during my visit in Austin.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was last week. I knew that Krista was coming to stay with us. So I haven't even explained to my listeners yet, like what the house situation is yet, but I'm living in this house and I'm going to have basically 3-ish male roommates. And I've lived with guys before. It's never been a problem. And it's always very easy for me. And then I knew that you were going to be staying with us for a little bit. So Krista's not a roommate, but she's visiting. And in preparation for your arrival, I noticed myself just picking myself apart for every little thing. I was so hyper vigilant, hyper aware of all of my behaviors. I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, what is she going to think of the food that I have in the fridge? What is she going to think if I don't wake up and watch the sunrise tomorrow? What is she going to think if my bed isn't made? And these weren't necessarily conscious thoughts at first. It was just, I noticed that I was so on edge about you staying with us, and it had nothing to do with you. I knew it was because I wanted your approval. And So I have trauma therapy on Mondays. So last week on Monday, I told my therapist this. I said, Krista's staying with us, and I've noticed myself so on edge and so hyper aware of all of my behaviors. And it all comes back to the fact that I want you to approve of me. I want you to think that I am worthy. And I don't have that same hypervigilance when I'm living with men. But then I traced it back in therapy and realized it has to do with growing up with sisters and a mom who was really critical of me. My older sister who was not super nice to me. All I wanted was for my older sister to let me play with her and her friends. I just wanted her to think I was cool. I wanted her to think I was worthy of hanging out with her and her friends. And my sister and her friends were not always so nice to me. They didn't want me to play with them. So I was rejected by them. And that has carried through that. I've carried that through without even knowing it because I've had female roommates and it didn't really feel like a big deal. But that was before I embarked on my trauma healing journey. So it really wasn't until I was living in the same space as you for a period of time and I noticed myself so hypercritical of my own behaviors and wondering, what is Krista going to think of me? How can I make sure I get her approval? And I told you it. I told that to you, even though I didn't even really know you that well yet. And we were talking about vulnerability. And I'd come back from therapy that day and I figured, well, what better way to be super vulnerable than to tell this person that I talked about her during therapy because I'm struggling with this. And like I said, it has nothing to do with you.
Yes.
But your presence was very helpful in teaching me this gap that I have in my own healing where I didn't know that I had this blind spot. I didn't know that I was concerned with my worthiness if I lived with other women. But it was really helpful for me to go through that. And you received it so beautifully and compassionately. You gave me a hug. It was really sweet.
Yeah.
So thank you for creating a safe space for me to share it with you too.
Yeah, I think that was very courageous of you to share that with me so openly. But we have had a great connection and it has been easy. We have created that space that it's easy to share. And I was very happy for you to share that story with me and now with your audience, because I think it's important to find that support in those moments that have been difficult for us and still influence our behavior. Imagine how many years later, subconsciously, that comes up when you just know that another woman is coming to live in this space and that is your reaction to that.
Yeah, I had no idea. And after I shared it with you, it went away. That was the other crazy thing is I think disclosing to you the fact that I had been struggling with it, it really absolved me of feeling any pressure, which was so nice. It's almost like I think sometimes saying the scary thing to me is the same as like jumping off a diving board. Like if you're on the diving board, like you got to jump. So it's almost like when I have this thought of, should I tell her? Like, should I tell her I'm struggling with this vulnerable thing? As soon as I ask the question, the answer is that I have to.
Yeah.
In my head, it's like, well, now that I've thought the question in my head, I'm on the diving board. I got to jump. And it always feels so much better. It's like the same rush. You're like, oh, I did it. I did it. I jumped off of that and now I feel great and it's over and it was fun.
And then you just let it go and then you move on.
Yeah.
A little bit like with the forgiveness as well. Like it's often these things that we carry with us, what we think are so hard, and we give them so much space in our mental dashboard. And then eventually, when we take the spotlight off from them, we just let them be things, we move forward. And yeah, I think vulnerability is a beautiful way of actually connecting with people. And then we are building real relationships.
I agree. Well, it's been really fun having you on the podcast. I'm so glad that you are my first guest. Thank you so much for being on the podcast and for being vulnerable and for sharing and for being you.
Thank you so much for having me and having this conversation with me, but with other people in the future. And also sharing your story with these people, like whoever find you and who finds value in your journey, because you are an amazing journey, healing yourself in so many ways and understanding how much, not just all the physical things that you're doing, how you're changing your diet, how you're changing your environment where you're living, but also how much that kind of actual inner work influences how much this kind of emotional regulation, or how to go through your feelings and how to meet people. Like all of that, how important it is to actually live a better, more balanced life. Yeah, I think it's a beautiful journey that you are on, and I'm so happy you are sharing it openly and vulnerably with everyone.
Thank you.
So yeah,
Thank you for being a part of it.
Oh, I'm so happy. I'm so happy. I hope I'm going to come to other episodes with you as well, because we would have so much to talk about.
We can't stop talking. Like, it's like we
should
could
have the mics on all the time.
All the time. Yeah, we've been like hours and hours. Yeah. Thanks everybody for tuning into this episode. We'll see you next time.